and my son's swimming outside my son's swimming class. So thought I'd knock out another live stream with you guys. Hopefully everybody's having a good Friday evening. I just got done working out a little bit ago. Did a bunch of little jumping stuff. Today was kind of a relatively, I guess, easy day. Tomorrow I'll be back on the rower. Once again, attempting to further break the American record, improve that mark. So yesterday I did it 117.1, 500 meters. Tomorrow I'll shoot for 116.5 will be the target, something like that. Take another half second off, and then eventually, like I said, world record 115.6 as it stands right now. So hopefully I'll take a half second off each time and then hit that. So probably, and each time I do it, I get a little bit more fit, kind of used to that horrible physiology that anyone that's done it all knows how they tend to not be that pleasant. They kind of suck, to be honest. But what else is going on? I should do a video on this. I put a little, contrast video of me, the typical eating the steak stuff. And there's a registered dietitian talking about how she feeds her kids for school. And, starts out, just, feed them a variety, healthy this, healthy that. And then the gal starts pressing her. She goes, well, there's no bad foods. What do you give the kids? Well, I give them whatever they like, but I just control their portions. So they can have potato chips, they can have candy, they can have whatever, it doesn't matter as long as it's portion controlled. And that is sort of the dietitian sort of lingo. I mean, that is their sincere belief that as long as you portion control, everything's fine. The problem with that philosophy is, as most of us know, myself included, portion control just doesn't work for food that is designed to be addictive. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of like pissing in the wind, right? I mean, it's just like it's kind of futile. It's like trying to bail water on a ship with a massive hole in it. I mean, eventually it's going to sink. So anyway, that's something that surprising. It's how that industry is set up. I guess these people actually believe this too, which is a real scary part. That I think they believe they're telling people the right thing, which unfortunately, if we look at the population that has been given that advice, it's not like that's something new. It's not like most people haven't heard that before. It's not like most people don't know you're not supposed to eat cookies and cake all day. I mean, that should be intuitively obvious for everybody. I think it is. The problem is, why do you still do it anyway? Well, because it tastes too damn good, and it's too, it's just too addictive. All right, we got some people showing up here, so we'll answer some questions. So comments on that. So meeting wellness, all the things on the dietitian under the table to put the kids on lunch for processed foods for sure. Yeah, and I saw them talking about, make it easy for yourself. Give these convenience foods, give these snack foods. Now you got to remember who funds these dietitians groups, and a lot of it is just these PepsiCo and Nestle and Danone and all these companies that make this convenience food, which conveniently leaves you sick and medicated, right? Anyways, SJK says my 8-year-old is smarter than that. Yeah, no kidding. Tyrus, get a little thumbs up with some bacon and steak in there. Good stuff. Charge them up with some of us actually hate cookies and cake and donuts, etc. That's not me. I mean, I like this stuff. If it were healthy, I would eat the hell out of that stuff. I mean, I got to tell you, I was one of the big sweet tooth guy. But I just don't eat it because I don't want it anymore, which is kind of a nice thing. The Gremlin finally talked the wife into letting me get a charcoal grill. Well, I won't make comments on that when they change the steak flavor, but charcoal, it does give it a nice flavor. I got to give you that. The only problem with charcoal I find is it's a lot more work, depending, like as much as I cook. I mean, I'm cooking 2-3 times a day out there. So if I had to start a fire, even with charcoal, 2 or 3 times a day, that would be a lot of work, a lot of, extra work that I probably would very, very rapidly get tired of. But all right. Rick, it's hard for me to imagine actually wanting cheap processed food instead of steak, seafood, iguana. Like the iguana in there in duck. Huge gains, like your style. Zach Peter, if you're having gallbladder issues, can you stop or reverse with carnivore? Um, well, that's an interesting topic, and what I will say, a couple things, is that there are people without gallbladders, many people without gallbladders, that do fine on ketogenic and carnivore diets. Absolutely, that occurs. Depending on what the issue is, if you've got a hot gallbladder, an infected gallbladder, acutely inflamed, irritated gallbladder, um, fat is not going to feel very good. It's going to cause contraction of the gallbladder, which is already inflamed and irritated. So that might be a problem. So, you might be able to, like, if you got some gall sludge or maybe some small stones in there, you might be able to dissolve that over time. There's some medications, um, ursodiol being one of them that you might want to utilize. I mean, long term, yes, I think a carnivore diet could be a solution to help in general. It's just that kind of weird situation where maybe you're um, sort of verging on cholecystitis, which is bad inflammation of the gallbladder, where you'd have to be very careful with the fat as you do that. But I think why we get gallstones in the first place is probably due to a chronically poor diet that is devoid of fat, because then the gallbladder doesn't want to contract because there's no fat to stimulate it. So the bile that sits in there just sort of stagnates and then kind of precipitates out. Then you get sludge and then later stones. So Tulip O'Hare. When I was younger, we were at the donut shop every day. My dad and his donut, coffee, and cigarettes. I'm a recovering junk food addict. Yep. Well, you're probably not alone in that. All right, we got our first super chat question once again from Nav. Wow, Nav must be he's always in here doing this. Thanks, Nav, again. Hey, doc, 75 days carnivore. Just got my blood work. My creatinine level is 1.31. My doctor's a little concerned. Wants me to go see a nephrologist. Is this an issue? Probably not. I mean, I say that probably because I don't know enough about you to say for sure. It is not unusual to see serum creatinine go up on a higher protein diet. That is pretty much to be expected. Probably the nephrologist will say, well, probably say it's no big deal. That's probably what they'll say. You might say I'm eating a lot of protein or more protein than I normally do. If it's an intelligent nephrologist, I'll probably say, okay, no big deal. I mean, there's way, this, remember that creatinine, which will then give you something called the estimated glomerular filtration rate, or EGFR. If you look at your lab, you'll often see a little thing that says E with the letter E, like echo, EGFR. So echo, gamma, Romeo Foxtrot, if you guys are military, anybody knows military speak. So estimated GFR, why it's estimated, because it's not directly measured. We're just estimated based on a serum marker. And the problem with that using creatinine is that it can go up with working out really hard. It can go up with eating a lot of protein. It can go up with just having a lot of muscle. So muscle turnover, protein turnover in the body will often be associated with elevated creatinine, and thus the estimated GFR being down, the glomerular filtration rate, or the measure of kidneys filtration function being down. Now, that can be resolved with a simple test called a cystatin C, which doesn't depend on protein. It can be directly measured. Sometimes they'll collect your urine for 24 hours and directly measure things. Most probably, it's not going to be a big deal. Now, depending on how clued in your nephrologist is, most of them are pretty good. Most of them probably they get this. They see this. They say, hey, I just eat a higher protein diet. And that should be the end of it. They say, okay, good, you're fine. But I don't think it should be an issue. But if if the nephrologist is still like, oh my God, could it stop eating protein? That's backwards in my view. There's no good evidence that shows that higher protein diet damages kidneys. I mean, it's just unfortunate. 1980s thinking, which has been clearly shown to be, not to be realistic anymore. We got another $10 chat from Nettie Daniel Nettie, or Nettie Daniel, I'm not sure. I'm reaching 1 month on carnivore, sticking to proteins and fats, no dairy or carbs. I work out daily. I'm looking for advice on what I might do before a cardio run walk to help me not fatigue. Well, a couple things. So, and I train all the time and doing this for 8 years. One, there's just a chronic adaptation period of time, and 1 month is not enough. I mean, for a harder athletic type endeavor, you probably need 3-6 months, maybe even a year, believe it or not, to really fully adapt to this sort of style, depending on how long you've been on carbs. If you've been on carbs for 30, 40, 50 years, then yeah, I mean, it takes a long time to adapt to that stuff. But what you can do in some regards, obviously making sure you're hydrated with both fluid and electrolytes is going to help, because that's sometimes an issue. A lot of times carnivore can be somewhat dehydrating for people relatively to carbs. The other thing is that if we look at what dictates performance, we're seeing more and more data out there. And Phil Prinz, who's a PhD researcher in sports performance out at Grove State College in Pennsylvania, has done some interesting insight in this and showing what is making people like bonk or run out of energy while they're exercising. And the heretofore it's been thought, it's glycogen runs out. When your glycogen stores run out, then you're not going to perform as well, and therefore you need to carb them back up. That turned out to be maybe not true, and maybe more related to blood glucose. So when your blood glucose starts to drop, then you might see a dip in performance. Now, if you're wearing a CGM or have a check it, you might be able to verify that. But, so what they're finding is much less carbohydrate is needed for that sort of thing. Now, the other thing that's important to realize is when you're eating carnivore, when you eat carbs, blood glucose will rise often 30 to 45 minutes after a meal, depending on the carbohydrate. If it's a really rapid acting carbohydrate, it's pretty quick up there, maybe 30 minutes. You eat a bunch of sugary something, and your blood glucose spikes pretty quickly. And then then that's available for working out. Now, if you're on carnivore, you don't typically get that rise, that immediate rise in blood glucose, with a couple of exceptions. There's reasons why that might occur. But generally, if you eat like a steak and eggs for breakfast, you're not going to see a sort of a peak elevation in your glucose for 3, 4, 5 hours. So you got to realize that the meal timing may be a thing. So time your meals differently, and then stay hydrated. Look at your blood glucose. Those are things I would sort of look at this point. And then chronically adapt. I guess there's another super chat here from D.A. Gremlin again. If I eat in the morning and salt my food, then I get hot while working. If I eat food in the morning and salt my food, then get hot while working, I get sick, puke. But if I don't eat salt, I won't get sick. Steak and eggs both ways. What's your opinion on why it happens? Gosh, why would you get sick eating salt? This is all speculative. I can't say for sure. I mean, there are actually people within the carnivore community that feel that salt is actually an acute toxin, and you shouldn't eat it. This goes back to Owsley Stanley. Some of you guys have been long-term carnivores know who he is. He was a Grateful Dead sound guy. I guess he was an LSD distributor. Went to prison for that, but he was actually carnivore for something like 53 years, and then he died at like 77 of a car wreck down in Australia. So he's had some interesting insights, and one of his insights was salt was bad for you, and we shouldn't consume it at all. And there are a few people within the carnivore community that just don't eat salt. They just eat meat and straight up, and they don't eat salt. Salt tends to be an appetite stimulant. I know for me, I like salt. I eat a lot of it, quite honestly. I'm able to eat more when the meat is salted. And for me, because I have such a high demand for physical activity and caloric intake, I need to be able to eat a lot. So, but why would it making you puke? I mean, it's going to shift your fluid balance around a little bit. Salt is going to, have an osmotic effect in the gut. Assuming it's absorbed, then it's going to have an impact on overall hydration status. But, why would it be making you puke? I don't know if this is something you've confirmed with multiple trial and error type of things. I've not heard that before, quite honestly. It's the first time anyone sort of mentioned that to me. So it would be just pure speculation on my part that I would just verify that's what's going on. Let's just try, these types of situations. Could there be some level of dehydration in there? Potentially. I mean, if you've because that is, you can get different sodium concentrations in the fluid or in the blood or extracellular fluid can have an impact on the brain and some of the chemotactic trigger zones where you have puking occur. So it could be with hydration status. And so maybe if you're salting and not taking in enough fluid, maybe you're hypernatremic and maybe that's having an impact. So those would be some guesses I have, but I can't say for sure. That's just not something I've really come across before. So hopefully they figure it out. Let us know if you do, but verify. Maybe it's maybe it's not enough fluid, and maybe it's not actually a salt and it's something else. But I don't know. We'll have to see. All right, we got a question from it's a Canadian car CA5. I think that's Canadian, I guess. This misinformation is dangerous to our democracy. Just kidding. Dr. On point. The TikTok trolls hate you. Carnivore is, for lack of a better term, game changer. The TikTok trolls hate you. Well, maybe they hate me. I don't know. I don't know if I've done anything to anybody, but this is it. I mean, as carnivore gets more and more popular, as more and more people try it, as more and more people have success or not success, there's going to be more and more people just talking about it, which is ultimately a good thing. I think that's if nobody was talking about it, then no one cares. There's no one noticing it. So I think in the end, and this is how since the beginning, I've been very consistent in my message. I think carnivore is a wonderful therapeutic tool for many, many people. I think there are millions and millions and millions of people who could tremendously benefit from it. And I'm going to continue promoting it that way. And if somebody wants to, adopt it as their lifestyle and, do that, that's fine too. I think it's completely fine. But there's people that strawman and put these ridiculous arguments that, vegans are the war. Vegans make the really stupid stuff. I'm not even going to address their arguments. But, there's people out there with, you need a balanced diet and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, the context which we live in today, when we look at what our food supply looks like, and you're like, why do I want a balanced diet of that crap? It's just, it's like, it's beyond, like I said at the beginning of this, when I was talking about the dietitian, these dietitians saying there's no bad food. There's no such thing as a bad food. As long as you moderate the calories, as long as you moderate your portion size, you could eat Reese's Pieces and Cocoa Puffs and Doritos and Twinkies and have a Coke. And, this stuff is literally destroying people's lives. I mean, it's destroying their health. It's destroying their minds. It's destroying their bodies. It's destroying their guts. And yet you've got these people out here just, towing the party line, because, I don't know, maybe it pays their bills. It's very sad to say. All right, let me go back to so I got all those super chat ones out of the way. Let me go back to the regular questions now. Let's see if I can find where I left off. Okay, so Master Chief Burgess, congrats on your wrong record, Shawn. Your trackers obviously understand the concept 2 ranking table. Yeah, it's kind of a, I don't, again, whatever. It is what it is. There are, I think, something like 30 to 40,000 people every year that compete in these concept 2 things across the various distances. And, age groups and so on and so forth. And, those that have done it know. Anybody who's done this and actually ranked the time or knows what it takes knows that, they're not easy to get. That's a pretty hard time to achieve. And then, particularly at my age, which, right now there's no one in the world that can beat me at my age. The one guy is kind of interesting. The guy that had the 55 plus world record, his name was, oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name now. I should remember it. But he died. He dropped dead right after he did it too. And unfortunately, I think he was taking a bunch of drugs. I think he was taking a lot of steroids and stuff like that. And he just seized up and had a heart attack and dropped dead, he set a couple of records and then immediately died afterwards. Really sad to see. One of the reasons I'm not interested in taking drugs, people cause I often get, there are people are saying, oh, you must be on these TRT and steroids and all that stuff. And I've never, literally, I remember I've written, it's kind of funny, in my career, I wrote 1 prescription for steroids. It's kind of funny. It's not funny. The reason I did that, when I was an intern, just out of medical school doing my internship, I worked at the burn hospital. We were taking care of pediatric burn patients. And this guy, Dr. Herndon, who was the head of the program, he's a big guy in the burn community. He was really kind of bellicose, loud, aggressive guy, very short-tempered guy. And he said, hey, I need you to write a prescription for oxandrolone for this as a steroid for one of the kids, because he wasn't eating, he was losing weight. And that's what they would sometimes do. They put these kids on steroids to help them recover from their burns. And so I wrote one prescription. That was the only time in my life I've ever even written a prescription for that. But I never. So I don't have much of a, you know. I mean, I know there's some drugs out there that people use. I don't really know much about them. I don't use them. I don't really delve into that. I just made that decision when I think initially I made a decision when I was like a 14-year-old kid. I remember I was just starting, getting into the gym, working out, and there was this bodybuilder guy. This is back in Indiana, back in the 1980s, early 1980s. And I remember this guy, I remember seeing him, and then he wasn't there, and then he came back, and he'd lost a bunch of muscle, and he was really silly looking, and he actually looked pretty jaundiced. And I was asking people, hey, what happened to that guy? And it turned out he was taking a bunch of oral steroids back then. It did something to his liver, messed him up. And that was my impression of steroid usage. And so I was always like, I don't want to do this. And then I just kind of, I worked out on my own, got stronger. And then I competed in powerlifting. And there used to be a powerlifting forum called GoHeavy.com, run by a guy named Tony Cardell out of Texas. And I remember I was the biggest zealot anti-drug guy. I was always like, these fucking cheaters, these drug users, these steroid heads. And I was very aggressive with it. I remember I had some of those guys wanting to threaten to kill me because I was so vocal about it. And so I kind of, I got away from just being so vocal anti-steroid, but I just, in my own mind, I was like, well, I'm not going to do that stuff. And I never, I competed in all these other sports when I was doing Highland Games, for instance. Now I'm a master's ass. I'm in my early 40s. And I won the world championship, and I won one world championship. And I took like second a couple times and third one or two times. And I remember they started talking about, hey, we want to allow TRT in the masters division. And I was adamantly opposed to that. I said, no, I think that is unfair, because they said, well, some of these guys need it, it helps their health. And I said, still, it impacts their athletic performance. So I've always, there's a record of me online going back forever. I mean, there's an interview back from like 2008 when I broke a master's powerlifting record when I deadlifted, I think it was 711 to set a USA powerlifting American record at the time, which was only there for like a week. I mean, it got broken immediately, but I did it. And they interviewed me for this article. And again, I was saying, hey, steroids are not the way to go, and on and on. So here I am, still 57, 40, God, what is that, 14 to 57, 43 years later, still, same thing. All right. All right, what else we got? Let me see if I can find some other questions here that look. Doc have an A1 plus. Have had an A1 plus. I'm not sure what that is. Nathan Shanner means. What do you think of coffee enemas, Dr. Baker? I'm not a fan. I mean, I'm skeptical. I got to tell you, I interview a lot of supposed experts. I mean, maybe they are experts, that I interview, and probably 75% of them, I just kind of, I interview them, listen to their stuff, and probably think most of them are kind of crazy. I mean, as crazy as I might sound on nutrition, and some people think I'm completely nuts on this, I am very skeptical about most things. I just don't think sticking things up your butt, pardon the thing, but I just don't think that's a good thing to do. I know some people that have said it's helped them. There's a guy with MS who said he did that, and then, he's on a carnivore diet, and, he starts talking about his coffee enemas up his butt. And I'm like, oh man. So I'm not I am doubtful. I'm skeptical. It remains to be convinced to me. I don't know that there's any good data on it. I'm sure though people say you can do just about anything, oil pulling or butt enema, enema butt things, or drinking your own urine. I mean, there's advocates for all this crazy stuff. I'm not that guy. So I'm just inherently skeptical. All right, Now's got another question here. All right, I mentioned to my GI doc that I wanted to do carnivore, and he told me that the FDA says it causes. The FDA says that. It doesn't. The FDA didn't say that. How do I tell him I'm doing it now and make him understand? Well, I mean, I guess I don't know what your background information is. A GI doctor, I assume you have some sort of GI issue, whether it's IBS or Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or GERD, or I'm not sure what you're seeing a GI guy for. But, well, I mean, again, First of all, you have to realize the doctors work for you. You don't work for them. They are your consultants. I mean, like I tell, be polite about it. Say, hey guys, hey, appreciate your input. You're not obligated to disclose your diet to anybody. I mean, it's none of their business, quite honest. I mean, maybe it might be relevant. I think it is. I think it's very relevant. But I mean, if you feel like you're going to get lectured to, or it's not, I mean, this is why we started Revero. Quite honestly, for you guys, Revero is our online company where we have doctors all over the country in the United States that deal with this stuff, and we're fine with carnivore. In fact, we prescribe carnivore in some instances. But I mean, you just say, you ask him, okay, so he says it causes colorectal cancer. Well, the reality of that, again, this is the World Health Organization proclaimed that back in 2015. This is based on something called the IARC, the International Association for Research on Cancer. And they did a study back in 2015. They quote unquote looked at 800 studies. They threw almost 95% of them out because they were just irrelevant. And they came to this conclusion that red meat was unprocessed red meat was a class 2 carcinogen, and processed meat was a class 1 carcinogen. It says it's got a risk there. The hazard ratio, the strength was unknown. Does it increase it very much or little at all? They came up with the conclusion that it causes about a 17% relative risk increase in your rate of colorectal cancer. And so if we take that at face value, 17%, 18% for processed meat, 17% for unprocessed meat, the baseline rate of colorectal cancer, the lifetime percentage of the average person getting colorectal cancer is about 4%. So if you add 17%, that means your rate goes from 4%, now it goes up to 5%. So, before you had a 96% chance of not getting cancer, now you have a 95% chance of not getting cancer. So the absolute risk is not very significant. But absent, even with that in mind, what are other things that put you at risk for colorectal cancer? Being fat, being inflamed, being diabetic, having GI disease, particularly things like inflammatory bowel disease, so Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. That's not a 17% increase. That's something like a 3,200 percentage increase. So you can mitigate so many risk factors by going carnivore for so many people. No longer diabetic, no longer obese, no longer gut inflamed and irritated, that it literally more than cancels out any minor risk that might be associated with meat, even if that risk were real. Now, I don't even think that risk is real because, well, for many reasons. There's been many, many subsequent studies that have come out. Nutrix 2019, the study out of Washington University in 2022, basically saying that evidence is so incredibly weak that it is just meaningless. So, I mean, there's a lot of studies out there you could point, but I mean, it isn't your job to convince your physician that this and that. Your job is to say, thanks, doc, I appreciate your input, and move on and do what makes the most sense for you. But don't trust me. Objectively verified. Are you getting better? All right. Am I getting better on what I'm doing? Are my symptoms better? Am my gut getting better? Am my body composition getting better? My mood getting better? My energy be getting better? Those are the things that are important. All right, let me go to another question. We got another $5 deal from Sizzle. Sizzle Serve Yum. That's a good name. The resistance band helped me break a plateau, now over 107 days on carnivore. Also, congratulations on breaking that record. Hope you're having a great day. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Resistance bands, I think you're talking about weightlifting, I guess. Yeah, I mean, they can be good. I mean, you've got, the variable loading, or the, can be a very effective way to get stronger. I mean, definitely, like when I used to compete in deadlifting, I used bands quite a bit, because it would, you would have this accommodating resistance that would be, at the beginning of the lift where you're weaker, it would be, not there. But when you got stronger at the top of the lift, it was harder. And so that led to a more rapid pull. And so, yeah, bands can be a great adjunct tool for sure. So absolutely good to hear you're doing better with that. All right. What else we got? Let's go back to the thing here. All right. We got a question here. We got Taglook Gold saying hello from Nome, Alaska. I hear it's cold up there at times. All right. Nathan Sharon, Doc, I've had a steady A1C of 5.6 on a normal high protein veggie, fruit, and low refined sugar diet. Went full carnivore for a month, and A1C jumped to 6. Should I be concerned? Does it make sense? Um, I mean, from 5.6 to 6 is not really that significant. I mean, it's a little elevated for sure, but I mean, it could be within the realm of testing error. I think that one, there's a couple considerations here. One, are the cells getting healthier and thus living longer and thus artificially inflating your A1C? That is a real concern. That does sometimes happen. So that can be it. Um, it could be within the realm of just normal blood variation with, just testing, because sometimes, you can test your A1C 2 days in a row and get numbers that are probably that far apart. So I wouldn't get too excited about that yet. I mean, and again, I caution people not to get too hung up on numbers and just obsess out, small variation between one number and another. Start looking at the overall big picture because, like I literally can move my cholesterol. Uh, I've moved it 200 points in one day, which is kind of crazy thinking about it. My cholesterol can move 200 points in one day. What is not going to change significantly in one day? How much fat I got on my gut. You're not going to get a bunch of belly fat in one day, I guess, unless you have surgery and get it surgically sucked off. But I mean, generally, um, I think it makes more sense to focus on things that indicate what's going on chronically. And I know A1C is touted as a 3-month snapshot of your blood glucose, and there's some truth to that. Well, there is some truth to that. But the other variable we don't talk about or we don't sort of consider is as what if the red cells are living longer than the 90 days? And then there's clear variation. Some red cells live 140 days, some only live 45 days. And so you can actually have diabetics with really good A1Cs that are really, really sick, and they have all these complications because their red cells are so sick they don't last that long. So they have an artificially low A1C. So some of those things are in there, but look at your overall trend. Am I getting leaner? Am I feeling better? Is my inflammation going down? Those types of things. And really the things that the real reason we care about diabetes in the first place is not the blood glucose number per se. It's the damage that's occurring. Am I getting kidney damage? Am I having retinal damage from, renal vasculature injury, vascular injuries? Am I having heart disease? Am I having, all the musculoskeletal issues that come with that? So, all right, let me go on to some more questions here. All right. Thoughts on immunotherapy for cancer. I think that's sort of the targeted thing. I think there's probably some efficacy in that. It's not curing cancer. I mean, I think some people are having some success with it. So I think it's probably, again, I'm not here to say a ketogenic diet is the answer to all cancer. I mean, I think it makes sense if you have cancer to improve your nutrition, and I think that makes sense for any condition. And I've certainly seen people put cancers into remission just via diet. That does seem to occur. Now, I mean, is that something going to work for every single person? I don't know. And I'm not an oncologist. I'll just put that out there. I'm not up to date on the latest therapeutic or immunotherapy protocols that are out there. I'm sure, as long as it's profitable, as long as it costs a lot of money and it's profitable, it'll get developed. I mean, you got to realize any novel therapy that's being produced these days at all, it doesn't even get considered unless there is a profit margin built into that research proposal. So that's the unfortunate sad part. Chemotherapy centers are extremely profitable. I mean, hospitals, they make buku money on chemo centers. They make a lot of money on interventional cardiology centers. Dialysis centers make a ton of money. What I did as an orthopedic surgeon, doing a lot of procedures, if you're doing a lot of procedures, makes a lot of money for the hospital. So anything that's procedurally based, they love that. So infusions, chemotherapy infusions, interventions, things like that. Mystical Stab Artist is saying what's up. And Carnivore Mank saying keep up the great work. Thanks, man. All right, I got about 5 minutes left, guys, and I gotta go pick up one. What else we got? Is one diet better than the other for high blood pressure? Yeah, I would say so. I think that Blood pressure elevations are, most of the time we call it essential hypertension or idiopathic hypertension. We don't know why it's going on. It probably has to do with chronic inflammation. And when we remove sugar and we lower insulin levels, we often see a improvement in blood pressure, right? And there's a number of ways to get there. So, I mean, I'm not going to say carnivore is the only way to get there, but certainly it seems to help. When are you gonna go for the dunk? Let's double down. Well, I'm giving myself till I turn 60, so I'm almost 58 now. I am, I'm probably on a vertical jump right now. I'm probably with an approach. I probably need to get another 2 to 3 inches on my vertical before I would realistically be able to dunk. That's going to probably come with some weight loss. So I got to get down to probably 240. I'm between 255 and 260 right now. I need to, because I'm breaking these rowing records, it behooves me to be stronger and a little bigger right now. So I'm kind of maintaining that, maintaining my strength, maintaining my body weight. And then, as I get closer and closer, I'm not in a hurry. I'm definitely not in a hurry to lose the weight because I want to maintain as much muscle mass as possible. So my target is by the time I'm 60. So it's maybe 2 years from now. I mean, I probably, we'll just focus on building up the resiliency in my tendons to handle that level of intense jumping that's going to be required to do that. So that's what I'm doing right now. A lot of like if you watch my video tonight, just some low level hopping, just boom, 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 just light tier plyometrics. I got to do lots of that. I got to do thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions just to get those tissues to where they don't explode, when you're doing the intensities required. I mean, it's kind of, my son who's 18, I had him jumping. He's jumping out of the gym now. He's autistic and he's skinny as can be. He's like 6'4", he's now 145 pounds. I got him up from 135 to 145, but he can jump, it's boom, 48-inch box jump like nothing. I mean, he's just, it's really amazing to see. And I've got, of course I outweigh the guy by, 120 pounds on him. So it's, there's just differences there. All right. What else we got here? How do you feel about them implementing mRNA into beef? I don't know they're doing that. I know that. I mean, as of today, I don't believe that's being done in beef. I mean, there's some talk that might be done in pork. We'll have to see. Honestly, we'll just have to see. I think a lot of ranchers are opposed to that. They don't want to do that. So I don't know that there's a need to do that. I'm not sure why they're pushing it, quite honestly. I think they're just like, well, this is the new science. This is the new technology. And all vaccines in the future, based on the last couple of years, there's some serious questions about that stuff, right? All right, guys, I got to go pick up my son. It's been a pleasure chatting with you guys. You guys have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you soon. And hopefully I'll have another American record by tomorrow. So we'll see how things go. You guys take care. Bye-bye.